We know that when an employee quits or leaves an organization, the remaining employees think about what this means for their future with the organization. This is highly undesirable in the eyes of the organization that works hard on retaining, training, and motivating employees. This research aims to explore the conditions under which turnover is contagious with two main considerations. The first is we just don't look at the number of people who have left the organization, we look at the individual person's contribution to the organization. Think about it. If we had a business unit that had 5 employees, not all of them would be contributing exactly 20%, which would be their fair share. We might have strong performers who are contributing 24-25%, and we might have weak performers who are contributing 17 or 18%. And essentially that difference in who leaves, whether it's a strong performer or a poor performer, might be a signal that gets interpreted by the remaining employees that affects whether or not they leave. The second consideration here is the role of the business unit leader. We think that the business unit leader has a role to play in supporting and communicating effectively with employees. And those business unit leaders who do so can actually reduce or mitigate the impact of turnover contagion. To test our hypothesis, we went to 93 car dealerships and tracked not only who stayed and who left, but also what each person was contributing as a percentage of sales. This told us who the strong and the weak performers were. We also surveyed employees about what they felt about their leaders. The information was collected in total for 201 employees over a 6-month period. Car dealerships essentially are an ideal study environment for this kind of a research question, because we can quantify the value that each person contributes through figuring out how much revenue they each bring into the unit, and each business dealership acts as its own business unit. The owner or operator is the leader, and all car sales staff share similar job descriptions, and they operate at the same level. Our study results clearly show that there's a dual comparison that happens when strong or poor performers leave. If the leader provides support and communication, therefore is viewed as a transformational leader, then two things happen. First, when an employee quits, it has less of a likelihood of triggering loss of another employee. And two, it doesn't matter if the individual employees who leave are strong or poor performers. The signals coming from the leaders stabilize the workforce and help workers stay on track when co-workers leave. Now, what happens when the leader is not a transformational leadership, when they don't provide support or communication? In this case, when strong performers leave, the remaining employees interpret this as a signal that maybe it's time for them to consider leaving too. Even if they don't know the reason, they begin to interpret different things. Perhaps the person leaving had more information than them, or they jumped from a sinking ship, or they had better job alternatives elsewhere. Individuals who stay behind begin to think that the grass might be greener on the other side. When the leader does not provide support or communication, but a weak performer leaves, it doesn't get interpreted the same way. Remaining employees reduce their likelihood to leave. They think the loss of the poor performer is better for the team, and it might signal a brighter future for their own employment. What does this mean for the companies? There's 3 things that we can highlight. 1, we as organizational leaders need to get out of a fixed mindset about employee loss. Not all employees add equal value, so we have to think about what the individual employee contribution is. This highlights a potential need for retention management of high performers, not just for business reasons, but also to mitigate and reduce the likelihood that others will quit. The second thing that this highlights for us is that leaders' level of communication and support can reduce the influence that co-worker relationships have. We need to train leaders to be effective, but the truth is many of them have moved into management from internal roles with very little training or development. The third thing that we can think about here is that in the absence of information from leaders, employees begin to interpret on their own what's happening in the organization and what's happening in the group. Those interpretations might be faulty. For example, a strong performer might have left to go back to school or for personal reasons, but it will be interpreted that a strong performer left because they were treated poorly at work or they got a better job somewhere else. Those kinds of miscommunications can lead to turnover contagion. In this case, it's critical to communicate effectively, honestly, and in a timely manner to the remaining employees when or if someone in the business unit leaves. Essentially, it's time to stop avoiding hard conversations. The leaders clearly need to be present during times of organizational change, and if they aren't, Others will make interpretations about what that silence is saying. I've said it before and I'll say it again, silence is not an option, especially during times of organizational change, and this research proves that who leaves matters, but also whether or not this leader communicates and supports employees is important in disentangling turnover contagion.